January 1st, 2026, 8 p.m. Mountain Time. This is the IPS Evening Deprogram, where we're going to discuss the PSYOPs of the day. Picking up from last night, there weren't any terror attacks, but there was a lot of action. Much of it involved fireworks and the absence of fireworks. Apparently, there's this ongoing, I don't know if you'd call it a scam. Let me update the title. But a lot of people are being conned every year. They're being told there's these big firework events and there's nothing there. So we'll look at that. I don't know if they bought tickets, but their gullibility was certainly tapped into. All right, here we go. What's up, McDirty Work? Kevin Mooring, King Ravana, Tommy Lee Jones' daughter found. Oh, that's terrible. Hopefully it's not real. When I see the really bad stuff, my first thought is, well, I hope it's not real. Like, I'm not morbid. I'm not jaded. Any irreverence we have is purely strategic. You don't want to give in to their emotional appeals. So that's something that came up yesterday with regard to that fire. Like, yeah, I hope that fire at the ski resort or whatever was just AI and fake. But is it even an extraordinary claim? And that's what it comes down to. Is it an extraordinary claim? And generally speaking, it's kind of not. You know, fires happen. These things aren't unheard of. But we have to consider, do you know enough to know it's real based on what you've been shown? Or could it have some ulterior purpose as a PSYOP? And that's why I suspend judgment, because there were some conspicuous things involving fire and fireworks, like rioters across Europe attacking police with fireworks. You had the burning cathedral and the fire in the Alps with high casualties. And I saw video from that one. And my impression from the video is that it's likely real because they were pixelating faces. When there's a fake event, you get the smiling crisis actor who obviously signed some kind of a release because it's a fake event. So it didn't really set off anything all that hoaxy in my head, but I'm still open. I'm still looking. It was in Brooklyn. Thousands gathered in Brooklyn for New Year's celebrations after rumors of a major fireworks display, only to end in disappointment. So thousands of people are crowded around the Brooklyn Bridge, and nothing happens. So I looked into it, and apparently this has happened. It's like an annual thing. It's almost like a separate tradition. Thousands turn up to non-existent New Year's fireworks display in Birmingham after being fooled by fake advertisements for the second year in a row. So that's a tradition now. A fireworkless show. If you saw my upload last night, you'll know that the tradition here in this part of New Mexico is firing weapons into the air, firing guns. And personally, I think anybody that fires their weapons, outside into the sky on New Year's should have their Second Amendment revoked. Like, what do they really need it for? Blap that kneecap. Thanks for joining. Happy New Year. Yeah, but anyway, 2 years in a row, these people got duped with fake advertisements. But I don't see any indication that they bought tickets. So it might have just been a bunch of cheapskates. But whatever it is. Then you also had, in many parts of Western Europe, New Year's Eve turned into a night of riots when migrant gangs used fireworks to attack the police, firefighters, ambulance drivers, and civilians. So Brussels, Paris, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and Berlin had these fireworks shows where, they're still fireworks shows, but they're launching it laterally in the direction of the police. So yeah, number of these firework war zones. And then you had the Vondel Church in Amsterdam, incinerated. Historic Vondelkerk burned to the ground on New Year's Eve. And I see it, and honestly, everything about it screams ritual. You know, you got this burning obelisk on a major night where they're praising the dog star, the scorcher. And that's what Sirius, or I think the Greek Sirius is known as Sothis in Egyptian. And I believe it translates to, because Greek is Sirius, Sothis I think translates to scorcher. So I kind of thought, well, maybe there's some kind of significance here that we're overlooking. And still, when it comes to that fire at the Swiss Alps thing, it was started by somebody in a Guy Fawkes mask who had a woman on his shoulders, and she's wearing some kind of a black mask. And then she's carrying champagne bottles with sparklers attached where they ignite the ceiling. And that's kind of an unusual thing, that the alleged arson, is wearing a Guy Fawkes mask. So there's all kinds of things you might extrapolate from that. So I'm not too quick to say it must be real because there's a high body count. No, I'll believe it when I have information to support the claim. Auto Hoaxer says there's a serial killer in New York. I saw that. They found a skull on Coney Island. Anybody care to guess what street they found the human skull at? This is a quiz. And I do have some of those PSYOP trading cards with the number 33. And I want to start giving those out for people who win these pop quizzes. Oh, also, since we talk about these events as occurring not in a vacuum, but within a wider decompartmentalized media ecosystem encompassing entertainment and news and politics and everything else, we should also consider that Avatar 3 just came out, Fire and Ash. So Fire and Ash, again, it's hard for me to say these things are disconnected. The last time James Cameron released a movie, Avatar 2, The Way of Water, it was all about the floods. Every celebrity had a flood in their backyard. Then there was the Cop City riots, and the environmentalists believed that the cops chopped down 80 acres of woods to build their training camp. There'd be floods in Atlanta. But the inference there is Atlantis. Atlantis sinks because of the actions of a few. So there's a subtext with the floods, Avatar, environmentalism that occurred concurrent with the James Cameron release last time. So given he just put out Fire and Ash, I'm inclined to think there might be something else going on here. Plain Code is a sparkler. See, who does fireworks in buildings? That's just plain dumb. And I'm not here saying that it's unbelievable or unlikely, but I'm saying if you think it's real, why is it that you think it's real? Like, what information do you have that makes it conclusive, given the past precedent of media using fake tragedies for various agendas? Unless we're just going to decide that, hey, in 2026, we shouldn't assume they're running psyops. So again, I'm a skeptic. I am the skeptic in this equation here. The people who are automatically believing it are going with the mainstream proclamation uncritically, because you don't have enough information to believe it just because of their coverage and their headlines. You have to have something else to substantiate it. There has to be a wider context in which it takes place that doesn't contradict it. And so that's what I'm waiting on here. And one of my first indicators of a hoax is drills in the area, relevant concurrent programming, and deeper subtext. So again, I don't have enough information. I'm suspending judgment, but if somebody has not suspended judgment, I'm very curious as to what particular thing got you to become a little conclusive about it. And when it comes to being conclusive, there's this idea of settled science, settled journalism, where you're talking about methods for gaining information, and it shouldn't ever be necessarily settled in case new information contradicts or alters the previous understanding. So we also have to consider that we shouldn't treat yesterday's news as carved in stone, which is why we're doing the Great Deconstruction. We're going to do 100 years of systematic retro auto hoaxing. Kevin Mooring says, welcome to Derry has a big fire scene. Let's see what else we have here. There's a new Rage Monkey movie too, says Copaesthetic. Interesting. Yeah, the Rage Monkey thing is something else. As we do this Great Deconstruction, we're going to analyze the concerted messaging. These instances where a meme or an idea has been created, manufactured, and adds to our world stage. Things like the bowl cut shooter and now the new shooter archetype. I came across this term today, and it was by this writer. I think his name is, I want to make sure I got the name right first. Timothy something. But he wrote something called hyper objects, where he was describing how our world is so big. The things that we, Timothy Morton, a professor, that the world's already, he said, conceptually speaking, the world has already ended. He said, we're aware of so many big ideas that we can't fit it all in our heads anymore. So in other words, we've been inundated with so much that we can't really claim to have perspective anymore, that we can see the arms and the legs, but not the body. And I agree with this concept here. And he refers to these things that you cannot conceptualize at once, these things as hyper objects. So in other words, our reality is very crowded. And I agree with this premise. However, I do think you can step outside of it, but it requires recognition of the mediated worldview as a fictional universe, as a construct, and that history is largely a construct. At the end of the world, it's hyper objects all the way down. Do you feel lost or powerless in the face of forces beyond your control? A hyper object describes entities that are so vast and complex they transcend our typical understanding of time and space. Examples include climate change, black holes, internet phenomena that are massively distributed but cannot be grasped at once. These objects are everywhere, defying our attempts to fully comprehend their scale and impact. So this idea of hyper objects ties into the notion of hyper reality, a Baudrillard term to describe when there's no meaningful way to really separate the fiction from the real because they've been seamlessly merged together. And that's where we're at. We are certainly at the point where the distinction between real and fake is kind of eluding us right now. I mean, it eludes most people. And a lot of it's because of perspective. And, I already said that I'm going to start off this year no longer debating people who still have a mainstream perspective. No, we just need to recognize where they are. But I'm not trying to convert or argue with people who have settled opinions. Settled opinions are analogous to what I described as settled journalism or settled science, where nothing can change these opinions. No new information can impact it. So at that point, you're talking about an orthodoxy. And the mainstream and alternative media perspectives are built around orthodoxies. That's why we had to brutally beat down Dave J with titanium blue wrenches, because he cannot let go of his hardcore fundamentalist belief in chemtrails. And he has a particular spin on it. He believes that chemtrails are, I guess, emissions from demons or something weird like that. But I realized he's never going to admit that he's wrong. And we're a group of people who are outside of the duopoly, echo chamber. And the thing that makes us distinct is that we've admitted that we were wrong with the belief in mainstream and alternative narrative frameworks. So we just have no problem saying, yeah, we were wrong about that stuff. We have to be somewhat agnostic. But those who cannot admit they're wrong, those with settled opinions, those who cling to settled journalism, settled science, and this crystallized worldview, yeah, they are products of the world stage and they're fixtures. No need to win them over. Curtifus says, Tim, you sound different. Your voice. Are you AI? You know, I was actually given an opportunity to get into this beta testing of Amazon, Audible, ACX, you know, the audiobook production companies, author-read ebooks through AI. So in other words, I could sit here and record samples of my voice, and then all of my books from now on can be listened to in my voice. And I've seen a number of people doing this, and I think it would be smart. So thanks for reminding me, because I'm not AI, but I will be soon. I just have to remember to follow through on that. Plain Dakota says, Dave J. disavow chemical trails. You know what? There's no way he can. You see, and we need to point out these examples of guardrailed minds, of guardrail clingers, so that we can make this distinction between them and what we're doing, because there is a distinction. And by the way, the Amazon book narration done by AI is cutting edge. And anytime they have a new iteration where the voices are better, they automatically update it. So if you haven't read Conspiracy Candy, you can listen to the audiobook. It's available now. Flozik said, I'd rather listen to your voice. Yeah, you know, it really depends. I've been listening to a lot of AI generated voices, and they're getting better. I used to do audiobooks, and I like doing it with real narrators because the collaboration means that you have an additional person who profits off of it and is invested in promoting it. So I would find narrators with big social media followings, knowing that they would promote the thing and it would be mutually beneficial. And at doing that, I've had some audiobooks, single books, making $500 a month for months, not through my efforts, but because I chose a narrator with a decent following. So I lose that, but what I gain is I don't have to pay a third party half my royalties. I've become rather addicted to this Carl Jung voice, which is obviously fake. And I don't know if I'm listening to AI slop, but it sounds pretty good most of the time. Seems like people are copying and pasting books and then creating these summaries and these videos out of it. And I think it's incredible. It's not boring. All right, so let's see here. So why would my voice sound different? I'm trying to wonder if I've done anything out of the ordinary recently. I haven't caught the vid. I haven't been out in the cold. Challenge Jake Paul to it. Dude, Jake Paul is, I don't know. Does anybody think that it was fake? Because I'm looking at the videos of the guy, his jaw broken in two places. His face is bloated and his mouth is wired shut. I mean, I think that he was beaten for real. I don't think he threw the fight. I mean, I think he was running most of the time. But somebody said that the boxer, Anthony Joshua, who then got into an accident and two people died in the accident, that had to have been fake. Like, I don't know. Verity says, I always prefer narration by the author. Right. Well, that's always an option. I could read my own audiobooks. Plain Dakota says definitely fake. Okay, so now what about it is fake? Because I don't know if you follow Jake Paul, and I understand if you don't, but I frequently see him wearing these bodysuits, like big belly, make him look like he's bloated, like Fat Bastard from Austin Powers. So he has access to prosthetics. He's all about the clicks. So could he have allowed himself to get punched in the face so that he could wear some prosthetic that makes him look like his jaw is totally broken and his mouth is wired shut? Plain Decoded says you can break my jaw for 90 million. Yeah, there's that. Well, we talked about the Jake Paul curse because everybody who gets involved with him has some horrible calamity befall them or they just disappear. All right, so let's continue here. Now we're speculating about the fires, right? But I'm just saying, given fire and ash, that's a red flag for me. And then the burning cathedral looking like the Eye of Sauron just really stood out to me as a little too dramatic. Like when they burned the Notre Dame, very dramatic. In fact, that one was totally a psyop. If you're not familiar with it, the fireman who went in there to rescue the actual crown of thorns that Jesus wore was a hero at the Bataclan event. So if you have a main character in a psyop that starred in a previous psyop, yeah, it's fake. Like if we see the cheesecloth guy at another event getting shot at, you guarantee that's fake. Auto Hoaxer GTFO says Anthony Joshua was ordered to lose to Jake Paul, and because he didn't obey, car crash Patton style. That's dark. I just saw that in Naked Gun, the self-driving car used as a weapon, where it's remotely controlled in order to take somebody out, like an assassination. So that's interesting. General Patton was killed by a motor vehicle accident at the end of World War II. Some believe it was intentional. I hadn't heard about that. Flozic says they're saying one of Anthony Joshua's friends' head got decapitated. No, his body got decapitated. Unless his head had a head. But that's fascinating. Jake Paul's there, like, mad, wired shut, having to write it down. Take him out. That's why I'm not going to get a Tesla. You don't think that Elon Musk has some kind of power to just tap into anybody's car and drive you off a cliff if you tweeted something unflattering? That's kind of worked into Leave the World Behind. Kevin Mooring says, see, the problem is that Jake could have gotten the punch in the first round, but they drugged it out and people are mad. Yeah, they had to drag it out because it's an exhibition. But there's this rumor that when Jake Paul does that thing where he like wags his tongue around, that's a sign that says, you're hurting me, bro, back off. Because he did it to Mike Tyson quite a bit. And he did it to that other guy, Floyd Mayweather, Floyd Mayweather did that to the other one, Logan Paul, where he held him up. It was like Weekend at Bernie's for an entire round. Weekend at Logan's, where Logan Paul is literally dead. And Floyd Mayweather has to carry him around, dance with him for a round before the guy comes back to life. It was terrible. Like, these fights to me aren't really in the realm of fakeability, but they're certainly stageable. Whereas Raja Jackson did not punch Psycho Stu. That was totally fake. And I'll fight you over it. Like, if you want to fight me because I'm saying that Psycho Stu did not get punched and that it was a hoax, if you want to fight me over that, I'm fine with it. I posted about this on Sean Strickland's X account, how none of the punches connected. I did a slow motion breakdown, and I received hundreds of threats that I would be beaten down for calling wrestling fake. And I decided that I will defend this. I will fight on. I will die on this hill. So if you want to fight me over Psycho Stu and try to go Raja Jackson on me, let's go. You can't say that body slam wasn't choreographed, typical, standard WWE consensual body slam. There's no way that would have knocked him unconscious. But that was last year. We have a whole new year, whole lot of new psyops. All of them are already planned. I hope you realize that the public's going to be surprised and they're going to react emotionally with very little information to every single thing that happens. But nothing that's going to, quote, happen hasn't already been planned and scheduled. And the reactions are planned as well. So we shouldn't act surprised. We should be observing and responding. But we should not be reacting at this stage in the game. The fact that people react reveals how out of the know they are about how this thing works. Kevin Mooring says, remember Anne Heche's car wreck? Yeah, that was strange. She crashes her car. They take her out. And then she tries to climb out of the blanket. And that was tied into a bunch of QAnon lore, and nothing ever came of it. I see a lot of QAnon stuff coming back because of one of Erica Kirk's ex-boyfriends, like the one that wasn't named Tyler. The guy with the Pizzagate tattoos. Apparently, people are finding that the guy was really into pizza and has been for years. And, of course, pizza is slang. Some say it's drugs. Tim Pool says it's drugs. Others say it's something else. And they've connected it to Erica Kirk, who apparently has been accused of trafficking children. We'll go through that and more now. Let's go ahead and start with that. Cabot Phillips. So in 2016, and this is like before Pizzagate, if this is a pizza eating contest, I'm taking the win. Check out Mellow Mushroom, Satanic Illuminati Pizza. Yeah, this is weird. Whatever you think about Pizzagate, you can't say it's not weird. Pizza Talk is the new pillow talk. He said that in 2018. Again, this is Cabot Phillips, who is not only a friend of Charlie Kirk's, they played basketball together, but he's an ex-boyfriend of Erica Kirk, who lied about being a virgin until she met Charlie. And then he's got Pizzagate all over his profiles. And now he speaks at TPUSA. So Pizza Talk is the new pillow talk, puts pizza into the realm of sex. That's kind of what the insinuation is there. And again, this is just strange stuff. Cabot Phillips also has the word pizza tattooed on the inside of his lip. Here's another tweet. I want that special girl who will give me the same feeling as when the pizza guy shows up at my door. And people are bombarding this guy's comments, his tweets from years ago, collecting all of this stuff. And this is ongoing, even right now. So people are suggesting that he's bragging, that look, his bookshelf. On his bookshelf, he had a book about cannibalism. Cannibalism, corpses, targeted assassinations. So he's setting off a lot of red flags here. And he's already been accused of it, of a trafficker and a, you know what. Psyop Sidecar says, Cabot makes me think about cheese. You know, there's just something about it that strikes me as unusual, is how he's one of Erica's exes, and he's a good friend of Charlie Kirk. Like, which came first? Very small circle of people. Everything is just so arranged and fake. I think the kids have been debunked. I don't think they even had kids. All right, continuing. So we talked about the fake firework events. Police in Hamburg were targeted with rockets and fireworks by urban youths. 1,400 police operations. 10 officers were injured in the night. So that's kind of a New Year's tradition as well. All right, moving on. I'm not into Pizzagate, but you can't say there's not a there. But my contention on this, and I've said this before, is that it's a manufactured conspiracy theory. Like, there's nothing to it, but they created the plausible explanation for this stuff leading you that way. They made it plausible. Like, for example, is it really that implausible that Hillary Clinton would wear the skin of a dead girl? You're like, okay, frazzle drip, I can kind of believe that. But, or Bill Clinton and Epstein Island, like, it sounds believable, but it could easily just be the fact that they're creating these things in order to get the reaction that they got. I mean, I don't know if you lived through this, but if you remember, at the very beginning of the Q movement, these Q people wanted to see everybody in Hollywood executed, starting with Tom Hanks. They also wanted Oprah Winfrey. I mean, they wanted heads to roll. They wanted executions on TV for crimes against humanity. That's how convinced they were. But this is a typical thing. It's a witch hunt, or like the Satanic Panic. The Satanic Panic, which has been brought back through Pizzagate, and that's another topic, the moral panics, satanic panics that target the right. But the Satanic Panics were created in a similar way, where you get this mob mentality, and you give them you give them a set of tools. Like, if your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. They give you a set of tools where now everything that you look at is going to go along with your bias. And so witch hunts tend to be self-perpetuating. And that's kind of what we're seeing. There's a science to it. And that just shows how easy people are to mislead. I mean, to brainwash. I mean, that's what we saw. People are doom scrolling themselves into a parallel universe. So last night I watched Begonia at someone's recommendation here. But Begonia is a mythical practice of generating new honeybees from the carcass of a sacrificed bull. This is in Greek mythology. And the movie does have a lot to do with bees, by the way. But anyway, it's a sci-fi. And it's about these two conspiracy-obsessed individuals. And I think it's kind of a horror movie where these conspiracy theorists are so insane from their echo chambers that they actually go kidnap a CEO. They're convinced that this person's an alien, and it gets really psychotic. There's a twist in there, and I don't want to offer any spoilers, but there's definitely some, I wouldn't even say dog whistles. It's like they're almost kind of equating flat earthers and transvestigators and other fringe conspiracy theorists with some kind of like homegrown terrorist threat, but coming from a place of sheer mental illness and not ideology. It's called Begonia. I'll do a thorough review of it in the future, but I don't want to offer any spoilers because it's actually pretty good. So I will comment on it later. Tomorrow, though, I think I will go see Fire and Ash. Oh, by the way, it's Emma Stone. If you like Emma Stone. And then Jesse Plemons, he was the psycho in Breaking Bad. He's kind of been typecast, but he's perfect for that particular role. All right, moving on. Fires fake events. David Icke has been saying some interesting things for some time. I wish he would have stuck to the reptiles. He said the main entry point to the human mind is the subconscious, which then plays out into the conscious mind what people believe are their own thoughts and choices. The subliminal, the below the threshold of consciousness, is the target. Yeah, this is interesting. He's talking about how there are marketing tactics, dream advertising is what's been referred to here. This idea of needing like some kind of implant or Neuralink, I think, is kind of misleading because I think they can already pick up on things in some way. The People's Lobby tweeted, "They've invaded my dreams already. It was noticeable. You notice one thing, that there are people you don't recognize and lots of them." This reminds me of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, this concept of dream advertising or dream targeting. I'll post a link in Discord, but this is the abstract from Dustin Marlin. Advertisers are attempting to market to us while we dream, not science fiction, but a new technique dubbed targeted dream incubation, TDI. Companies begin inserting commercial messaging into people's dreams by creating an association during waking life using sensory cues, by pairing sounds and visuals. As the subject is drifting off to sleep, the association is introduced with the goal of triggering dreams with the related subject matter. Based on a 2021 American Marketing Association survey, 77% of 400 companies surveyed plan to experiment with dream advertising, or what the article here calls branding dreams, by 2025. So we're already there. And it got me thinking about how Facebook gave all of our DMs and our search histories over to Netflix. But again, we're talking about dream advertising as subliminal advertising, targeted dream incubation. There's no escape. Violet Pengon says there was B stuff during the CK shooting and DeCarlos Brown. What was the DeCarlos Brown B stuff? You got the CK shooting in Utah, the Bs, and then the guy that stabbed the girl in the subway had the B tattoo on his chest. We had noted that. There must be something here. I remember we were talking about Bondi Beach, Brown University, and a lot of Bs, like the letter B. There was like this alliteration built into some of these things. But yeah, the Bs have been sort of a theme since that subway shooting. Plain Dakota says, I got a Domino's ad in my dream last night. I forgot about my dream ad blocker. Sounds like a Black Mirror episode where if you don't pay premium, you will get advertisements in your dreams. But if you do pay, it's like YouTube. You know, I cannot stand the commercials. I think they design commercials to be excruciatingly bad. So you're forced to pay. It's like a protection racket. It's like mafia stuff. Like they make the ads so bad that you want to be protected from this. You don't want to have these interruptions in your songs with this disturbing content, this just sidetracking your thoughts, spoiling the mood. Well, you got to pay. So I pay YouTube Red. I would pay that before paying for food if I had to. That's how bad the commercials really are. Year of the Horse says conscious reality. Okay, I hadn't thought about that. Year of the Horse. What was last year the snake? And then 2020 was year of the well, no, it wasn't Year of the Bat, but there was a 2020 quarter, and I collect these when I find them. And the back of it has a bowl of bat soup. And it's not the first time that currency has mirrored the psyops, like the $20 bill and 9/11. Critterfist says they have pop machines now that when you walk by, you will hear, "I want Pepsi" in your head. Seriously, no joke. Sure, I'm sure we're easy to program in this way. There was a time where I was driving around quite a bit with this little dog, and every time I'd go through Starbucks, they would give us I think it's called a pup cup, where they give the dog a little paper cup with foam in it. And so I would get a coffee, and the dog would have the Starbucks foam, and it would begin to expect it. So we would drive by a Starbucks, and it's like it would salivate, like Pavlov's bell. And that's smart too. You market at the pets, you market at the children, and the parents and the owners are forced to comply. That indirect influence. And I think that's going to be employed with the brainwashing, because everyone here is somewhat intransigent, independent thinkers, and your opinions are highly inconvenient for the status quo. They've got to contain this. So, what they may do is use AI agents to influence the people's opinions, the people around you, that is, and their opinions, in order to provide a bulwark against your opinions spreading. Like, I think they could do this. I think they could turn every person in your life into an Agent Smith through an indirect target marketing campaign where they are able to put the right ideas in their heads so that you're surrounded by people who all think in a certain way that contradicts whatever it is that you're thinking that you shouldn't be thinking. Guard railing, but bringing it into the meatverse, into real life. And I think this is possible if it's not already being done. Just based upon studies I've read regarding the influence of AI agents in Reddit, where they change people's opinions in very significant ways. And they said that the bots, the agents, are 6 times more effective than real people. Plus, they can be scaled up to infinity. Okay, 2025 was the dragon, and now we're in the horse. All right, let's move on. So again, it's called TDI. TDI is a targeted dream incubation. So dream incubation is a thing. And I'm still seeing videos all the time popping up of people who are asked to review products that they bought with cash. Oh, Puppuccino, is that what it is? And I'm skeptical about these things, but I used to use self-hypnosis. I used to get recordings that were subliminals to listen to. I used to go to sleep listening to these things. I think they work. One of them was just ocean waves, but then subliminally it had all kinds of like affirmations where basically you just lie to yourself. Supposedly it's going to cause these things to become true. I don't know if it really works that way, but I've experimented with it. And I know I am very easy to hypnotize. I used to record my own auto hypnosis scripts with an induction, talk myself down, and then 20 minutes later I open my eyes and I don't remember what I had absorbed during that period of unconsciousness. All right, let's move on. I'm reading that through people's comments about this TDI. And, people are talking about this as, okay, it's unethical. FTC is going to have issues. You're talking about subliminal marketing and advertising. This is something that's not really legal or even ethical. And so obviously subliminal advertising is bad. I get that. However, what do you think psyops are? Our entire news cycles are dominated by fake events. It doesn't matter if it's subliminal. They align directly to your face and you're believing them. The last thing we need to worry about are the subliminals, when people can't see through the lies that are right there blatantly in their face. So I would suggest it's misdirection. All right, moving on. Like Golden State of Mind says, disgusting. This should be illegal. Hard lines should exist in all areas of life. Let's see what else. This technology should never have been used outside the field of medicine. Who controls it now? No informed consent. You can thank Edward Bernays and his filthy Uncle Freud. Right, Edward Bernays and Uncle Freud, of course, do have a lot to do with this understanding of subliminal marketing and influence. However, their descendant co-founded Netflix. And my point here is that what they've done with entertainment and news and psychological operations and fake staged events far eclipses anything that could possibly be done with subliminal influence. They've taken control, like real, serious, tangible control over our minds. So, yeah, it's sort of like the whole digital deep fakes. It's like they've been deep faking us with synthetic masks for decades. If not, I mean, basically, we already live in a deep faked world. So, what does it matter that they have a tech that makes it easier? Just means they're getting better at it. Okay, let's continue. So, the other day and yesterday, I was talking about looks maxing, which is a far right thing. And it's basically geared towards, because on that far side, they're very much about eugenics and purity. We're talking about the white nationalist far right side of the spectrum. And they always refer to people as dysgenic. They're very about purity, racial purity, and certain like aesthetics that they consider to be marks of their superiority. So looks maxing is a movement where, and again, this is political. Like you think Andrew Tate's a tough guy to them because he's a pimp and he's violent and then he's a fighter. But they look at him and they say, no, his chin is too recessed. His eyes are a little wonky. And he's the wrong race. So they can't even admire him because he doesn't have the right chin. And so their ideal is called the Giga Chad. And the Giga Chad is a meme. And this meme is the epitome of masculinity from their point of view. Like, this is how you need to look to score a trad wife. And so this looks maxing is essentially a set of techniques to make you look like that guy. And some of the techniques involve breaking your bones, or they call it bone smashing, pounding your bones with a hammer so they grow back thicker, and other techniques. A lot of it, maybe even various drugs like meth or TRT. But anyway, I've been watching this develop because there's this one particular looks maxer who was on with Nick Fuentes. And he was making fun of Nick Fuentes for being old and having a receding hairline and needing to go to the gym. And basically, they're all about this thing called mogging. Mogging is a term they use, which means being the best looking person in the shot. So it's kind of like photo bombing, but just making someone look inferior. So they're obsessed with looks, thus looks maxing. Well, anyway, this whole thing is inorganic. It's strange that it's even become a thing, but it harkens back to like Elliot Rogers level thinking, like manosphere psyop narratives, to make it look like these guys are all American psycho. My point of it is, someone brought it up that this is starting to look like a movie they saw. And I remember I think I saw the trailer for it, and there was something else. Here it is. Reseth. I feel like I'm watching, quote, Beautiful Ones experiment, where a group of mice in John Calhoun's famous Universe 25 experiment, who, despite plenty of food, water, space, lost all motivation for interaction, mating, and fighting, and focused instead on grooming and eating in secluded bliss. This led to the colony's collapse and extinction as they failed to reproduce. So what he's suggesting here, what is being suggested here, is that this is some kind of marker that we're at some kind of a decline, past the point of no return, total degeneracy. But then I saw this show on, I think it was called, let's see if I can find it now, but where people were in the future trying to look perfect by using all these, I think it's called, somebody knows what I'm talking about, let me know. I'll see if I can find the trailer. Anyway, I'm trying to find out what the incentive is here. Like, why is this being inserted into this at this time? It's rather bizarre, but everything else about this particular subculture, the Groypers, is rather bizarre. Because it's the same group that's voluntarily celibate. They call themselves incels. And this is a protest against feminism and Western women and women who can vote. Okay, let's see what we have here. Conscious Reality says, what's the story of the French soccer player who was burned by a fire today? Let's take a look. Okay, French soccer player was one of those who was at the Swiss Alps. His name is Santos. Tahiris Santos, French soccer player, among critically injured. Injured more than 100. The Swiss officials had called it a national tragedy. Now, that's an interesting addition to the story, because when we're looking at these events, we're often looking for indicators that it could be staged. Does it have any celebrity endorsement? This is notable. It just makes it less likely that it's going to be missed. Everybody's going to hear about it. So that's new to me, but anyway, taking note of it. I'm still undecided. Like the serial killer in New York, leaving a skull on 33rd Street. At first I thought, that's not unbelievable. People kill each other. We have psychopaths all over the place. And the idea of there being a serial killer isn't all that extraordinary. However, when the news reports, oh, they found the skull on 33rd Street, immediately I'm thinking, okay, this is looking a little hoaxy, a little Masony. All right, moving on. Going through my Twitter feed at ips.monster. Anything worth discussing, I'm putting on X now, instead of relying on minds.com and other sites. I saw this alarmist post, this video describing, quote, a new dark age. And the narrator says, are we living in a post-literate society? His name is James Marriott. He's a Times columnist. And he raises some points about how reading used to be for the social elite and how there's always been this disparity between those with the knowledge, the education, the access to books, and the general masses, and how all of that has changed. But now we're saying, despite all of this, we are seeing a lot of atrophy in that regard when it comes to reading books instead of just scrolling on the screen and going deep into books and learning how to think. And so he's just describing this as a change in values that may be precipitating a dark age, and that we should read more to avoid calamity. But as with all of this alarmism, it fails to account for the system that we're already in. And when you can see that, this other stuff pales by comparison. Like subliminal advertising or subliminal manipulation of the population by putting messaging into their dreams or something, that only sounds scary if you're not aware of how deep faked this reality already is. The idea that we're entering a post-literate society is meaningless compared to we can no longer tell real from fake because of the televised, the broadcast visual lies that you cannot see through. It's like things are so much worse than these alarmists are projecting, or at least maybe not worse, but there's so much more like we're already under control. It's already here. It's not going to get any worse. This is a soft totalitarianism. I'm not going to call it a benevolent dictatorship, but it might be necessary. They might need us in the village for a lot of reasons. I mean, either we're dealing with soft totalitarianism, a benevolent dictatorship, or this is an extension of something sinister, possibly a contrivance meant to enslave or entrap souls by putting them in a false paradigm, which eliminates the soul as a subject worth thinking about very deeply, as part of the process of perhaps getting ensouled beings to lose sight of their point of origin, and thus necessitating endless and meaningless cycles of reincarnation. Like it could be a matrix thing, a Gnostic soul trap. I mean, Gnosticism to me is one of the more plausible explanations or plausible models to explain what we're looking at. The idea that the world is inherently a deception on the metaphysical level, but also that would comport with the idea of our worldview being a major deception. Just different levels to this onion, layers. BML says they're making real look so fake. Yeah, I think this has been by design. I think I drew attention to this in 2020 or so when I think it was Douglas Mills. He was the special effects guru for 2001 Space Odyssey. He was talking about how digital special effects did not age well, that they're impressive, but new iterations make the other ones look bad by comparison every few years. And by contrast, his special effects from 50 years ago aged better and still hold up today. And these were made with models, scale models, physical objects, as opposed to being just completely made up in a CGI environment. And I think that this diminishing of the realism has been on purpose. And the reason why is to dumb us down, to make it harder for us to see through fake events. Like reality does not get a fair shake anywhere. Reality TV is a joke. It's obviously scripted. And that's also part of the program here, I think. It's all about taking you out of objective reality and putting you into your own subjectivist, solipsistic framework. And everybody in the asylum is entitled to their own universe. We don't all have to agree. We can be internally diverse on are subjective interpretations as long as we stay in the asylum. As long as you don't leave the Truman Show, they don't care what you really think. Because the menu of items that you've drawn from to think about was provided to you by them. Okay, moving on. I kind of got over the Alex Jones versus Candace Owens thing. She's totally jumped the shark, but nobody cares. And Alex Jones and Candace Owens are on the same team. They both start with the premise that Charlie Kirk is actually dead. And if that's where you're at, you are part of the problem. You're part of the program. So the list of major psyops from last year that we went over: the drone panic, Psycho Stu, Austin Metcalf, the new school shooting archetypes, Dick Cheney's death, Erica Kirk, of course, is a walking psyop. And we got into the build-up for what's to come in 2026. And I think a lot of us have our fingers crossed that there's going to be some Oppenheimering, some coastal city, hopefully Seattle. And when I say hopefully, I'm not saying I want Seattle to get nuked, but we are looking forward to the next major plot twist. And we're just preemptively calling it staged and fake, and nobody's actually going to die or get hurt. Although many will be inconvenienced by blackouts and possibly lockdowns that they will secretly enjoy because they'll be watching Fallout and they'll have their food drone delivered. It's like during the pandemic, you had your DoorDash and UberDash. Everything's going to be drone now. You won't even have to deal with no contact deliveries from human beings. And I've seen some of these Amazon drones. So it's happening. I'm waiting for Taco Bell to get their drone delivery down. All right, let's continue. Auto Hoaxer says Goldfinch is on the phone with a hypnotism trained honey trap after hearing the easy to hypnotize revelation. Beware. Well, we are all easy to hypnotize. I think most of us are hypnotizable. I don't know the exact stats on it, but I do, in fact, go into a trance pretty easily. I used to be into a little bit of meditation. I had this program. It's called the Silva Mind Control Method. And the primary exercise was reverse counting down from 100, seated, eyes closed, box breathing, like 4 seconds in, holding 4 seconds, 4 seconds out, while having your eyes closed. Your eyes are actually focused at like 45 degrees up. And the claim was that you could bring yourself into a alpha trance, and that from the trance state, your active imagination would be enhanced. I mean, I used to really be into this idea, but it involved the idea too that when you're being hypnotized, you're accessing a part of your mind that has more agency than you do, in the sense that you can influence events, like law of attraction type stuff. So none of this stuff's new. It's all new age, but I used to really be into this notion here that hypnotism, auto hypnosis, trance states might actually have an application in this notion of whatever you want to call it. I hesitate to use the word magic because it's just been defined so many different ways that are kind of contradictory. And I don't want to put it into the category of paranormal, but I think it might not be that paranormal. I think it might actually be part of our operating system, and you can demystify it. But I think it's important to think about it because one of the things that has obviously been gate kept is the human mind, our full understanding of it. There's a reason why we have a false worldview and why we're given a program to make us compatible for it, and why this worldview operates outside of the transcendental. We're just a bunch of evolved apes, etc. The information about the mind that might be useful for us seeing through the fake stuff has obviously been shelved. Nobody talks about intuition like it's a real phenomenon that can be developed, that is a natural aspect of the mind, or that synchronicity, for example. I find this topic endlessly fascinating, but I've come to conclude that synchronicity is not a mystical thing. It's not the universe, but that it's part of how we can tap into our wider informational field that is necessarily excluded from our awareness for the purposes of us having a coherent experience. You know, our center of awareness, our ego necessarily has to exclude most of the data we're taking in just so we can function. But all that extraneous information doesn't just go into a landfill. I'm saying it gets organized and it's accessible, actionable, reachable through mechanisms that aren't really well understood and have been relegated to these fringe areas of magical thinking. And I kind of think this stuff should be brought back into the realm of science and psychology. Big hair tsunami, another bag of wrenches. Thank you. Contrast ratio, cut by the book. Peace and wealth seeker. Say what? Till AJ2065. Tony Driscoll. Anonymous 3666. Jews own the media. Now have a blue wrench. They all have the, and one more, Jorge Glockington. So you're all Blue Wrench Lodge members. I'm not going to ban that guy just because of his username, but I find it very curious that we have J-Pill people here in the audience. I mean, J-Pill, that's like Nick Fuentes' gig. That's for incels. That's for paranoid, aggrieved, oppressed incels. Like, oh, I need the scapegoat so I don't have to take accountability for my own mistakes and problems. I mean, isn't that what it's about? Why else would you need a scapegoat? And I got into a debate with one today, and I'm like, yeah, you're woke, right? He's like, I'm not woke. Well, yeah, actually, you are. Woke left means people on the left have woken up to the fact that capitalism is oppressive and racist, and that they are oppressed, and they need to wake people up so that they've awakened to how things really work. That's what wokeism actually is. Red pill is an awakening. People take the red pill, and now they're awake to the conspiracy theories. They're woke. That's what they always say. I woke up. Alex Jones woke me up. Well, you can look at it now and say, well, obviously they're not awake. But they're claiming to be awake in contrast to the majority who are still asleep, who aren't aware that they're oppressed. So we don't know that we're oppressed because we're asleep. But the ones who are awake, oh yeah, if you're awake, you look at the normies like, you guys need to wake up. Well, the J pill is the same thing as the woke left with a different scapegoat. Instead of scapegoating whites and systemic racism, they believe that Israel's oppressing everybody. But fundamentally, they believe that they are oppressed. And my other issue with that whole premise is, if you're still someone who believes the J pill narrative, you're blaming them for all these different things throughout history. Like they killed Jesus and they did 9/11, they did JFK, they did this and that. All of the things that you accuse them of having done are fake. And when you factor that into it, well, then what are you really mad at them for? Like, oh, Israel did 9/11. I'm so mad at Israel. No, 9/11 was actually done by Hollywood, by Stanley Kubrick, James Cameron, the DHS. It was a government psyop, and it was not an authentic terror attack. So you really can't be mad at Muslims or Israel. Like, those are two scapegoats that are actually exonerated by our findings. So my point of it is, if your worldview is based around a scapegoat, you need to ask yourself, well, what did they actually do? And a lot of these people get mad at me because I take away their reason for existing. I'm like, oh no, actually, these guys aren't really the bane of your existence, and it's all just narrative, and you've been brainwashed. And they would rather believe what they believe because they were secure in it. They had a social group around it. They could hang out with their other incel looksmaxer friends and blame this group for everything. They don't want that taken away. But anyway, I find it curious to find them here. Now, I would be really shocked if we had a woke left person here. That's pretty much non-existent. And even though I make these equivalencies between left and right, it should be pointed out that the left is the favored demographic when it comes to the media and their triangulation. So the media triangulates. This is why we have these two sides and why they will never reconcile. It's triangulated by design. But the left is the golden child, the favored one by the narcissistic media, because Big Brother's a narcissist. And the right is the scapegoat. And they maintain this dialectic, the favored one, the rejected one. And as such, the left has no reason to be against the media because the media coddles them and favors them over the other side. All right, let's see here. Continuing. BML says French Fry TV is super awake. I'm not familiar with it. If you want to post a link. All right, so I'm going through my Twitter feed to see if I've missed anything. Again, if you haven't seen it, Naked Gun has a pretty good subtext revolving around a cell phone born mind virus that causes everybody to revert into beasts. Basically, they all go crazy and they start fighting each other, killing each other, and the elite go into bunkers. But again, it's a mind virus, but it comes through your phone. This is the 2025 Naked Gun. And this theme of the elite going into bunkers is in everything now. All right, let's see what else. Yeah, it has a Musk-esque character. I guess I could bring that up. The antagonist in the movie is a Elon Musk-like guy who has these electric cars. And when he wants to take out one of his enemies, he logs into their car and he crashes it. All right, let's see. Teenager describes the terrifying moments before the deadly fire ripped through the packed bar. His name is Oscar. He narrowly escaped. I'm going to take a quick look at this. So we do have, I'm going to retweet this if you follow me on Twitter. We do, in fact, have some more footage now. And we do have some eyewitnesses. Teenager narrowly escapes the horror. I'll have to refrain from opining on it now, but I'm going to post a link because we were waiting to see if there are any hoax indicators. And at this point, I'm still undecided, but we're gathering information. We're still in discovery. So there's something for you to consider. I posted the link in the Discord server. Here's the headline regarding the skull. NYPD finds a human skull near Coney Island Boardwalk. The discovery is made in the bushes on the boardwalk between West 32nd and 33rd Street. Like, if they had reported 33 people died in the fire, I probably would have said it's a hoax, just off the bat, because of the pattern recognition that it would bring us to. But and in the Discord server, you'll see that there's quite a few other things that we've been noticing. So we're just trying to look at the bigger, wider system, the ecosystem. And again, I'm very curious to see what's in Fire and Ash. So if anybody has seen Avatar 3, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, I'll probably check it out tomorrow. So we discussed the Vondel Church, the Swiss Alps, the migrant firework riots, and the non-existent fireworks shows that dupe people year after year at the Brooklyn Bridge and in Birmingham. Imagine going to Birmingham 2 years in a row for fireworks at midnight and literally getting nothing. And what about all the people who are waiting for 3i, Atlas 3i, to bring the aliens? Wasn't everyone talking about that? They were all hyping how this 3i Atlas asteroid is bringing the aliens. It's going to end the world. We're going to have blackouts. It's going to do something. And it never happened. And there's nobody asking. Like, all the people who hyped it just forgot about it. Memory hold. How does that work? I think people need to be accountable to the ideas that they propagate, especially the ones that don't come true. Like, I'm still waiting for any of my former friends who went down Q Street to come back and say, hey, I'm sorry. I took a wrong turn in Trutherville. I hit the Q pipe and I was stuck for a few years, but I'm back. I'm ready to go back to objective reality. Otto Hoaxer says the Lindbergh PSYOP a century ago was on 233rd Street. King Ravana says, wasn't it going to happen on December 19th? Yeah, it was supposed to happen before Christmas. All right, let's move on. I guess that nobody cares about it anymore is what I'm saying. And I just think it's strange that you could actually feel enough about something to hype it up, but then when it doesn't happen, there's no letdown. It's almost like just spreading the meme is rewarding enough. Just getting the likes and the retweets and participating in the buzz. It's all just stories anyway. Okay, so we will be live tomorrow, likely same time, 6 or 7 p.m. It's not really a slow PSYOP week, but we're kind of like over a lot of the stuff that has been going on. I'm hoping that Candace Owens gets her job back at the Daily Wire or something. I think we're done with Charlie Kirk. And it's all about Erica Kirk anyway. Everybody I know talks about her. She's extremely popular. She's probably going to be your next president. Granger Man has brought in 10 more wrenches. Flozic, Hal Billy Homestead, Angst G, Lean Dion, Lickety Split, Marion May, Richard Jones, JDMZRX, Dr. Bass Ackwards, Josh Lebsack, and Blap That Kneecap. You've all got the blue wrenches. And I am recording videos specifically for members. Usually I'm just sitting around in random parking lots drawing pictures, but I'm going to be producing content for members. In fact, right now behind me, I have a whiteboard because I'm preparing a number of diagrams that I can just do for any kind of discussion regarding the new book. So the handbook for the recently deprogrammed is my primary focus right now. I want to distribute this book, and I want to get discussion going around it. And part of that is explaining the basic concepts in under 90 minutes. And I think I can do so with the help of graphics, because we're talking about this invisible prison, this compartmentalization process that you can't actually see it happening. It's invisible, and it's built around your presuppositions. It's built around parameters you were given and a framework that you have to adhere to that constrains your thinking. And in order to explain it, I think I need these graphics that can just simplify it. And that's kind of the point here. So the whiteboard and the book at various bookstores, in order to get Q&As, is how I plan to promote this book. Handbook for the Recently Deprogrammed, A Skeptic's Guide to the Theater of Psywar. And I'm going to order a few more copies. Every week I'm going to order probably a dozen copies. Blap that says, waiting for one of your art pieces to arrive. Yeah, thank you for ordering. I have been planning on switching my subject matter from landscapes to more psyop-oriented themes. So if there's a particular crisis actor or hoax that you want rendered in pencil or charcoal, possibly acrylic, I'm 100% fine with doing any of these. Just, I'd like to keep it on a certain theme. For example, iconic photos, like the fight photo. I've done some of those with watercolors. And those actually sold to people who really believe that Trump got shot. Like I might do a painting of Charlie Kirk putting the squib on, for example. I know I want to use that as an image for a PSYOP trading card. So I figure I'll develop the new PSYOP trading card designs, as I have been, using AI. But then I'll take the best ones and I'll paint them. I had someone ask me to do a painting of dancing nurses. I think that's a good idea. There's a few of those shots that would be worth doing in some kind of fine art medium. The nurses twerking on the IV poles while we were locked down, forced to eat from UberDash while binge watching on Netflix. King Ravana says, are there real miniature Golden Hoggy Awards to hand out? You know, I could get some real Golden Hoggy Award trophies made up. That's a good idea. So Golden Hoggy Awards are it's the idea that we have our own Oscar. So every year we will host a party where we talk about the best PSYOPs, and then we present awards. And the Golden Hoggy refers to this trophy that is basically David Hogg's face kind of turned into a trophy. Yeah, if you don't know about the dancing nurses, so in 2020, I issued out more than 100 press passes because if you were, quote, essential, you were immune to lockdowns. You didn't have to be locked down if you were part of media. So I said, if you want to report to Infinite Plane Radio, I will send you a press pass. And people started driving around to see if the hospitals were indeed overflowing. And what we found was, and I had a website at the time, emptyhospitals.com. What we found is that none of the news reports reflected what we were experiencing in reality. It was like it was super hyped up or something, kind of like they do with the climate. Well, then the strange thing is the only videos we got from inside the hospitals were nurses dancing and sometimes just horsing around, playing in the MRIs, recreating scenes from movies. Like a bunch of them were on a hospital bed, recreating the scene from the Titanic where Leonardo DiCaprio is hugging the girl at the front of the boat. There was a band scene where a bunch of them were banging on bedpans like drums. A lot of choreographed dances. But this was across the world. I mean, we're talking thousands of videos of dancing and twerking nurses. And a lot of people called it out and they said they're wasting PPE, they're disobeying social distancing, and they're seemingly not busy saving lives. And what the normies would do, because they tend to defend the psyops, they said, oh, the reason why is that they were so stressed from all the deaths that they had to dance to let off some steam. And a lot of people found that explanation acceptable. And it had me wondering about stressful times in my life when I was in the military or when I was telemarketing. I can remember some times where it was overwhelming, but at no point did I ever try to organize some spontaneous choreography in the back parking lot with my coworkers to blow off steam. Never seen it. I mean, I don't know about you. Does anybody here have a job that's very stressful where you just go out on your lunch breaks and dance it out? Because apparently nurses do that. And none of them have come forward and talked about it. And so I'm still curious as to whether these were actual nurses or if they were hired to do this job to create this content. Because I know they shut down a lot of the clubs, the gentlemen's clubs, where because of social distancing and all that. Like, who supplied them? Where did they come from? Ears Up says, I wonder if Oppenheimer will be unlockdownable. Yeah, that's a good question. Like, will the press pass allow you to go outside when we have fallout? I don't think so. You know, it's one thing to avoid lockdowns and protest it because of a virus, but I don't know. I think people will be less inclined to resist lockdown if they think it will kill them. And there's a movie out called The Humanity Bureau that came out in like 2017. It's got Nicolas Cage, The Humanity Bureau. And it's about society being locked down, escape from New America. It was a 2018. In the near future, global warming turns the Midwest into a desert. Well, everybody's locked down. And there's this law against contraband where you can't have Geiger counters, um, which would allow you to know if you can actually survive leaving their quarantine. So in the film, people were being locked down, and it had to do with keeping people ignorant of the ability to test or keeping people from being able to test their environments. So this is the Humanity Bureau. The Geiger counter reveals that there's not any radiation. It was a scare tactic to keep people from fleeing to the north. So the movie's about America getting locked down as a scare tactic. Totally fake. Again, this was in 2018. Here's the Wikipedia. The Humanity Bureau ensures citizens are efficient. The inefficient ones are deported to New Eden. So the place is called New Eden. And no one can leave New Eden because it's not safe, but it turns out it's a big hoax. They were tricked into locking down. Critterfest says every movie has Nicolas Cage in it. Yeah, Nicolas Cage was in Snake Eyes, right? And he's in this one. And this is another point. We talk about meta scripters and the directors who are frequently shown to use or to insert psyop messaging into their movies. But there are actors who are consistently in movies that have predictive programming. So Nicolas Cage would obviously be one of them. In my opinion, one of his best movies is Renfield. It's kind of a recent one. And it's about Dracula's servant, how he's actually a codependent and Dracula's a narcissist. And so he goes to therapy to get out of the toxic relationship with the vampire. It's pretty good. Another Nicolas Cage one that I think might be relevant here. Well, there's so many of them here, but we have to do this mind mapping thing where you go to every actor and you correlate their predictive programming roles with the particular psyops, and then just see what dots connect, what directors overlap, which one of these actors is in the know. But yeah, Nicolas Cage is certainly one of these actors who has been in multiple movies with predictive programming in it. And it doesn't mean that they are totally in the know about how it all works, but it does show something. It does suggest that they're aware on some level of what you could look at as, at a minimum, subliminal programming. At the very minimum, the predictive programming is subliminal advertising for future fake events. Because that's what we're talking about. These future PR stunts become historic events that become fixtures of our consensus worldview. And every one of these simulated events is preceded by a buildup of predictive content in the movies. And I look at that as product placement for future fake events, subliminal advertising, not to mention conditioning and putting things into your frame of reference, suggestibility. Things are so much worse than the people worried about them getting into our dreams speculate about. Like if you're worried about your dreams being targeted for advertisements, um, you're kind of like missing the bigger picture. Like the people who used to say, and I don't hear this anymore, they're going to take our guns. Every truther used to believe that they were the firewall against global tyranny, that the American Second Amendment is the only thing stopping the New World Order from taking over. They're going to take our guns by faking these events or doing false flags to justify taking the guns so they can take over. It's like they're not going to take your guns and take over because they've already taken your minds. They got your minds. They don't need your guns. I don't hear people talking about that anymore. And last night, it sounded like the live ammo exercise from basic training. I was just sitting outside listening to gunfire from about midnight to about 12:15. One of my neighbors seems to have a 50 cal. That's what it sounded like. I don't know if you heard it. Somebody said I use AI loops. No, that was real. By the way, Zoran Mamdani took his oath of office in the subway. So that went down. I saw a picture. Very symbolic. Subways are symbolic of the underclass, the threat against the rich, eat the rich, kill the rich, communist revolution. Because that's what, it's also hyperbolic. But on the right, their big fear is communist revolution. And on the left, it's the fascists. It's like the fascists are going to get us, the communists are going to get us. But it's always triangulated because the real control system, the real totalitarianism that's already been established, has people believing that it's this group's going to take over, that group's going to take over. It's like, no, we've already been taken over. And neither of these two have any chance because these are just subsets of the bigger mind control program that not only exists and has already been established, but it already won. Like we've already been conquered. The human race has been subdued. There was a global mind war and we lost. We lose every day. If you haven't been to the Discord, go to ips.monster. I have all the relevant links there. And also what I have on that site is the audio player. So the archives from the last 2 days, the last 2 episodes of the IPS Deprogram will be looping on the ips.monster. Maybe the last week. I just deleted 2025, but I'll probably do maybe a week or so, 12 hours or more of content on a loop, but I'm going to update it continually. So if you're not up to speed with your Metascript analysis and fake world news breakdowns, you go to ips.monster and just listen. You will catch the latest replays. And of course, you'll find all of the relevant links conveniently placed, very simplified. I'm not using the big website, just a single page. In fact, there's 18 people listening there right now. So it has a link to the server, the latest book, live video, and the archives. I want to say thanks to everyone here for supporting the channel, supporting the think tank. We're about to get very serious and focused. Not that we've been unfocused, but I've been doing this digital nomad thing for a few months, and that's going to come to an end soon. I said I was never going to end this vacation. Why should I? Maybe I was being petulant because honestly, I don't intend to be on a vacation for the rest of my life. Like I'm not resisting getting serious about things or settling down. I'm just, at this point, I have a lot of projects in the works, and I want to make sure I'm properly allocating my time and resources. But the next major thing is getting into an office space and focusing on the publications, because we are aggregating as many deprogrammed as we can for the off-world stage perspective to consolidate so we can begin with this great deconstruction. And if you want to be a part of the great deconstruction, just get in the Discord server, and it's going to kick off here very soon. There's just a few minor details we need to decide upon, but once it gets rolling, once we start mind mapping out these connections and establishing the template on how to proceed, it'll be like putting together a big puzzle. And we're concentrating on very specific events that fit certain criteria. So we're not wasting any time. We want to establish a parallel timeline of major world events, but with additional context that would help delineate between these two timelines, the real world and the fiction that's superimposed over it. And in order to discern these timelines, we really need to create this separation, because you've got the duopoly of the mainstream media and then the approved wrong answers, the approved conspiracy theories. But that's very monolithic. And it only appears to have some internal diversity, but it's actually very monolithic. So we need to have a separate account of how things have happened. And this third column will represent our perspective. And I think it'll be compelling. It'll be compelling, and it'll help make the case for a number of claims that I've been making quite a lot lately. Things that I think are pretty much self-evident, but until you see it on paper, until you see it mind map, it may not sink in how big of a deal it is. Specifically with regard to the timelines and how far in advance major historic events are planned, and what that implies with regard to everything else. How rigged is this world? Well, everything is rigged. It's a rigged reality. All right, thanks for the comments and support. I'll have members content in the morning, mostly related to the whiteboard projects, the history benders. I've been developing a few new infographic concepts. So I really think that's the key here. If we can get people to visualize the invisible cage and the compartments, they will be able to see the world stage. And you can't step out of it unless you can see it. Sync Kid says, how can I pre-order multiple books to give to friends? Well, if you want signed copies, you can get them at ips.monster. If you just want to go to Amazon, you can buy as many as you like. I'm going to place an order for half a dozen more. So if you go over to the link, and I'll put a link below, there'll be some copies available. But yeah, every week I'm going to re-up, and those will be signed. But you don't have to get signed copies. You can get straight from Amazon if you so choose. But here's a link. And on that link, it does have the Amazon link in case I'm out of inventory here. But I've been ordering regularly after the delay from the... See, originally this book was going to be released on 9/11. I got it out on 9/12, which is perfect, though, because it came out right after the Charlie Kirk event. BML says you need weed to open the third eye to see it. I don't know. I don't know if altering consciousness is mind expanding or just inebriation. I think what you need more than drugs is clarity. And I think you get clarity by updating your operating system. This is about psychoepistemology, not pharmacology. Clear thinking, not I mean, I'm not anti whatever. I mean, I don't think it matters. I think what's more important is skepticism over incredulity and credulity. Objectivity over subjectivity and solipsism. I think peace of mind makes more sense than mind war participation. And I noticed that drugs are exceedingly popular. Every other gas station where I live has been converted into a weed dispensary. If weed, as you call it, led to people seeing through the propaganda matrix, it probably wouldn't be so widely available. So I tend to think that it probably isn't a gateway to seeing through anything. In fact, a lot of people who are into the weed and similar drugs are probably highly susceptible to simulation theory and other such garbage, which leads you further away from objective reality. Someone says psilocybin. See, I don't agree. Again, that's a separate category. But I do think that what we need now is a sober, objective take on what's really happening. We need to be the ones at the party that aren't drinking. We're like the designated drivers here on the world stage. Everybody is drunk on psyops, and no, you cannot get high and see through this thing. I mean, maybe some of you can. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I mean, a lot of these drug gurus have all been phony. Like Joe Rogan, big weed head, and he thinks we're in a simulation. That's where it leads you. Marijuana is a gateway to bad metaphysics. All right, thanks for joining. We'll continue this conversation endlessly because our work has only just begun. And it's going to get more interesting as we go along. And we're going to bring a lot more people into this. And everybody here in the think tank seems to be pretty interesting based on your comments. And this is very important. You know, I think that the 10 days I took off of the internet made me realize how, yeah, there's a lot of extraneous stuff to ignore, but there's quite a lot of value and meaning to be taken from these interactions. It's edifying, it's educational, and I am at a higher state of situational awareness about the world than I was before I started engaging with other free thinkers who weren't caught up in the usual honeypots, cul-de-sacs, and